Hey everyone, and welcome to Think Copilot. My name is Garry Trinder. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. I'm focused on Microsoft 365, and I have with me today Waldek.
Hey everybody, my name is Waldek Mastykarz, and I am also a developer advocate for Microsoft 365 at Microsoft.
And we have a guest with us today. We have Tom with us. Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Tom Morgan. I'm not a developer advocate at Microsoft 365. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I work for a company called Cloud Interact in the UK.
But you are an MVP for Microsoft 365, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So, same thing, right?
You almost said it as if it was reluctant, like, yeah.
Well, it's because they keep changing the names, I'm honest. It's like, is it Office Apps and Services? Is it Microsoft 365? I can't remember anymore. But yes, I talk about all the things. So it's
there you go. There you go.
Things. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is AI and Copilot. And so we're really interested in understanding, how do you use Copilot, Microsoft Copilot's AI in your day-to-day?
So I think there's two ways to approach this, and I kind of use Copilot in two fairly separate ways. The first is I'm a developer and I work with other developers, but I have to do that inside the construct of a business. So part of me using Copilot is how can I spend the most of my day doing development and the least amount of my time doing all that other stuff. Okay, and that's where Copilot can really help me there.
Like emails, meetings, planning,
right,
PowerPoint,
the busy work,
whatever,
right?
writing
exactly.
documents.
The things that make a company work. But yes, how can I use Copilot to minimize that and maximize my development time? And then when I'm doing the development stuff, how can I use Copilot to do that better? And that might be my own personal development, but it might also be as a team. How as a team can we move forward together better by using Copilot? And we've come up with some ideas for doing that kind of en masse as well, which we can dig into.
Fantastic. So, have you got anything kind of that sticks out as without this in my daily routine, I'm going to be less productive?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cloud Interact, relatively small company, growing quite quickly. We're balancing multiple projects at the same time, and that's just sort of the realities of becoming a business. So quite often I have that fear that I'm dropping balls somewhere with different projects. So actually being able to come in, especially on a Monday morning after a Friday, and saying what's happening with this project, what's happening with this project, what's happening with this project. I find the meeting recap stuff really useful, even for meetings I was at. I will quite often meeting recap on Monday, the meetings I was at on a Friday afternoon, because let's be honest, probably not getting 100% of me on Friday afternoon. But looking at the recap, and it's like, oh, I did say I'd do that. I did say I'd do that. We did agree that. That puts me in the right frame of mind for a Monday morning follow-up. And everyone thinks it's great because it's like, oh, Tom's totally on the ball here. And it's like, no, I'm not. I switched off all weekend, but I switched off safe in the knowledge that I could switch on sort of effectively come Monday.
And I guess that is an interesting case, right? Because my experience is that typically folks think about, recap of meetings like, oh yeah, but that's, for a big company working across the globe, different times. Well, apparently not, because even with just, a few employees, even then you can already reach the scale where it's just too much to keep everything in mind. And at the end of the day, we all crave for the balance between work and personal life. And this is kind of giving you that, right? As you say, you can switch off, you can decompress, knowing that you will not drop any balls because you have this assistant keeping track of all the different things you do doing your work.
That happened to me this Monday, actually, because like you say, even small companies. So I was in a meeting on Friday. There was probably 3 or 4 of us. We were talking about a project, and I was recapping on Monday, and Copilot said, here are your actions. And I looked at them, I was like, yep, I didn't agree to that. And so I went to fan in the recording, and I didn't agree to it, but the CEO suggested I should do it. And I kind of went, and in a way you could kind of tell I wasn't thinking. I was already preparing the next sentence in my head because I'm terrible at doing that. I'm not listening, I'm already formulating my reply. So actually he gave me an action that I completely missed. So actually Copilot bought it. So that was really
and I mean, if anything else, right? It's an interesting thing because it wasn't, as you said, it wasn't an explicit agreement, but that's how it might have been perceived by the person to whom you talked. And that's also a great way for you to get kind of what's it called, to be made aware of that. Hey, like that is how the person might have received that. Maybe you want to check that. Maybe it isn't an action, but it might have been perceived as such. So check this thing, right?
Yes, absolutely. If Copilot thought it was an action, who else on that call thought it was an action? Yeah.
Exactly. If it sounds like an action and it's perceived like an action, it's an action, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. The other thing I find I've started doing, and I've started doing this everywhere, and this is kind of like maybe this is like a good tip to kind of do in your Copilot journey, but I definitely do it with meeting recaps, but also in other chats and stuff like that. I'll always Copilot, is there anything else you would do? Just like is there anything? I have it copy and pasted now, like, so I copy and paste almost at the end of when I'm almost done. I'll be like, just throw that in, because and it, based on, like, you might suggest doing this, you might suggest, and sometimes they're really useful, so it's just it's almost like having a second opinion of, so I find that really useful as well.
Like a second opinion, like having an assistant as well, right? It's like you can just call on and rejig your memory, and like I say, it's interesting because it's like you talked about the Friday, right, and the kind of your mind's on the weekend about doing things. You do just, you can naturally miss things. You're not always on the ball, but like Copilot's there kind of like as a backup, really, just as it's there just in case, right?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned kind of like always asking a particular question like at the end of the meeting. Have you got any other tips around things that you regularly ask Copilot?
Yeah, I often ask it to summarize my day, especially at the end of the day. I find that quite a useful way. I've sort of built it into my sort of workday shutdown routine, of like, because it sort of helps my brain mentally. So that you go through your tasks, you go through one last check of Teams and email, and then having Copilot say, like, this was your day, and you like, yep, that was my day, and now it's done. That's mentally, that's quite a good thing, I think. But generally, I do treat it very much like a personal PA, even for things I know it won't be very good at. Like, I do it anyway, because it's kind of like I feel like it's a good process for me to get into, because what it can't do today, it will be able to do tomorrow. And even if none of that's true, as a developer, I subscribe heavily to the rubber duck theory, which, if you don't know, is like when you get stuck with a coding problem, just talking it out with somebody. The number of times I've dragged a colleague out of what they're doing to explain it to them, and as I'm explaining it, I was like, oh, that's the problem. So like, we have these like yellow rubber ducks, and you put it on the monitor and you talk to the duck, and 9 times out of 10 you'll solve your problem. Actually, like, working that through in Copilot for like the non-dev side of things actually is really useful, because quite a lot of the time Copilot will make suggestions and help and automate some of that process. For instance, I've been finding calendar slots is amazing for that. But even if nothing else, actually the process of just getting that thought process down really helps you with or without Copilot. So, yeah.
Like, if you look back, since you would start using these AI assistants, how did it change the way you work, think, the way you approach things? Like, do you see any significant changes in the behavior that you've got, or it's like, you used to do things, now you just changed the way you did them, but you're very much the same?
So it's hard to know whether. I think these two things happened at the same time, which worked out really well for me. But I think the two complement each other really well. And the first of those is me being much more intentional about how I spend my day. So I'm fully subscribed into the annual goals, quarterly goals, weekly goals, daily goals, making a plan for the day and doing all that sort of stuff. In that world, having Copilot around is actually really helpful, because Copilot sees the calendar. If I'm super intentional about filling up my day and my calendar with the things I know I want to get done today, I can use Copilot to hold me accountable, B, to remind me what's going on, and then actually, this is another tip that I've just remembered. At the end of the day, if you're one of those people that has to submit timesheets, get Copilot to bullet point for you the times on your projects based on your calendar. Because if you've been intentional about filling up your calendar and then working to your calendar, Copilot will just be able to like churn those out for you, and you can copy and paste them into the timesheet. So I find that those two things work really well together, but it does require that it requires you to put some work in there to be like, well, this week I want to achieve this. If you tell Copilot that, it can help you. And if you tell Copilot what you want to achieve in a day and keep that conversation going, it will be there to kind of support you and help you do that. But there is an effort on your part to kind of be intentional about like planning your day, I think.
Did you ever have a chance on that? Like, did you ever have a case where you would say, I want to achieve X in this week, and you put something in the calendar, and then Copilot comes back saying, hey, like, you're doing this activity, it doesn't contribute towards your goal. Do you want to rethink that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think it has. But to be fair, I've never asked it, and that's a really interesting thing to ask. Actually, is like based on my weekly goals. You've given me an idea of something that we'll probably talk about in a minute, but like that's a great new project that I'm going to take away. But yeah, based on my weekly goals, do what I have planned for the day support those goals? Like that's a great use of Copilot, I think. Yeah.
It's interesting there. You're talking about kind of like, being intentional about your day. There's lots of kind of productivity approaches around, block your calendar out, make sure you're spending the right amount of time. But it's kind of like sometimes those things can feel a little bit isolated from other things. With Copilot, able to kind of look at that and then go, well, I know the timings as well, and you just keep things up to date. Like, oh, I wanted to spend an hour on here, but actually I spent a little bit less and maybe a little bit more. At the end of the day, that summary is then more of a realistic representation of your day, and that consultant kind of day as well, where potentially you're juggling a few things. It's very easy to be like, oh, like, did I spend an hour on that, or did I spend less? But by keeping things up to date, you're getting a direct benefit of using Copilot for your summaries. Yeah. That's a really interesting approach. So Tom, obviously seems like you've been using like AI Copilot for a little while. Can you remember the kind of the wow moment that you had when you first started using it? What was the thing that kind of got you hooked?
Yeah, I think so. Fairly early on, I think I used Copilot for building out some test data for a project we were working on. But it had to be fairly realistic, so it had to be kind of to do with like a real thing, but also had to be sample data, and that can be quite tricky. But actually, like playing around with some prompts, you could start a conversation of like look at this, but then carry on. Like, here are some examples. Generate 10 more that are fictitious, and then like internally as a company, we've taken that idea and developed it, and we now use generative AI a lot for generating test data, because it's so quick, B, it's genuinely random, so it actually is quite good for pulling out edge cases and things like that. But also, especially if you're building proof of concepts or demos or things like that, you can have a really consistent theme all the way through, because as long as you generate all your test data in the same conversation with the same history, you can say, generate the CSV file of the data, now generate the web page, pull out some things, put them on, generate some 15 fake customer testimonials, and it will reference the same people and the same events and the same things. And so the whole thing ties together really nicely. So if you're giving a demo, it's not just like random data all over the place. It's like you can really tell it sort of a story and a journey. So
that is really cool. Yeah. So do you use any tools to ensure that the data you get is in the right shape? Like, for example, you've got the right length of address and order, it's a number, and some other things is a good, and so forth and so on. So that, for example, if you need to expose it either in code or in API, it matches the code you've got.
We don't use any tools to do it. We just write really big prompts. I use JSON quite a lot for generating the data. Like, I get the data out in JSON. I get a lot of the so for like website content, I'll get it out in Markdown, because it doesn't really like doing HTML very much, and like it, you can't say generate files and stuff like that, but you can do Markdown, and Markdown works really well. So I tend to do that, and also it can read back the Markdown as well. So it's quite it's nice. It's worth trying. It's really quite fun. Yeah.
I think an interesting tool in the space is type chat, I think it's called, where you give it a shape of the data, and then you can ensure you work basically iteratively with AI, with LLM to kind of work with arrive at the right or the shape that you want the data to be, so that it matches your API or code.
Yeah, that's a sensible idea. That's cool. Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah.
It's an interesting scenario with the test data, because like it's something that you always need to do, right? And it always makes things better by having that, more richer test data. I think when I've done it, I've found how easily you can generate test data from a very small prompt. I think we've got the Contoso organization, and you've got the products that are in there as well, and you can just take the name and say, hey, generate me a description from this, and it's actually really good at just taking that and using its knowledge of, it kind of has an understanding of what Contoso is, because it can kind of make better judgments, and by using that as test data just does make things like samples and even demos, right? Sales demos, I can imagine, to customers actually saying, well, here's the customer I'm going to, they have these products, and we'll just kind of take we'll take what we get from Copilot, so it feels more like real world, so then the customers can see the solutions that you're building for them, like it feels like our company. It's easier for them to make that leap.
100%. And you can use the Copilot to generate the RAG data that your future Copilot instance you haven't built yet is going to use, as well as the website. So like the whole thing ties together really nicely. So you do a sales demo of a nice website with some testimonials, you show the different things, but then you have the conversation with the bot, and it's the same data, because it's all like
Imagine right, that you come across somebody who has never used LLM before. What would you recommend, like the first thing to try, like to get them to that wow effect?
Yeah, I think you've just got to jump in and try. I think it's a real learning. We're all on this learning experience, and the nice thing actually is that we're all beginners. This is almost like another type of input device. The way we interact with computers, this is kind of different to anything we've had before. So I would say, don't beat yourself up about it, but do explore. It's one of those, you can explore and not break things. Like nothing really bad will happen, like if you just try stuff out. I think so. It's worth trying. I think it's worth. I think information discovery is quite interesting, because it's quite expansive, and you can start in one place and then be led by the suggestions. I found the suggestions in a lot of the Copilot chats, so for instance, the one in Teams or the one in office.com, that Copilot chat, the suggestions at the bottom are really good for like, oh, I would never have thought to ask that. So start somewhere and then look at the suggestions, because they give you really good ideas for, oh, is that a thing you can do? Well, let's try it. Oh, it is a thing you can do, and that's how I found out about, like, I need to talk, I need to meet with this person. Well, actually, first of all, it was, do I have a meeting, like a one-to-one scheduled with this person this week? Because I'm pretty sure I should have. No, I don't. Right, when's a good time? Like, and doing those things is like, oh, this is easier than going through calendars.
Yeah. And I guess maybe another thing is that you wouldn't ask that a person, but when you chat with an LLM, one thing that you can always do is, okay, like, what would you recommend me to ask as the next thing to ask about the thing you said? Like, what would you want me to ask you? Right? In other words, basically to learn more. Like, because if you don't get these, pills with additional things to ask, you can ask about things to ask to learn more and to kind of get going, right?
Yeah. This is a bad place to reveal secrets. It's also a good time if you want to just de-stress. So if like somebody, if you've got like a coworker, and like you just want to rant about them to someone, rant about them to Copilot, because that chat is completely private, and you can ask all sorts of legitimate questions like, what on earth did so and so do last week? Did he do anything? Did he send, and he'll give you some good, he'll tell you. I mean, like, oh, okay, he did do some stuff, like, so it's actually quite good for just getting stuff off your chest as well.
I think recently I've seen this thread going on about AI therapists, and like whether that's a right or the wrong thing. And of course, like there are opinions on two sides, but if anything else, like it's a non-judgmental, or maybe it is, depending on the prompt you put originally in, person or entity to which you can just like empty your soul to without any effect, right?
Yeah,
like there is
cathartic.
no consequence to you just, you know, emptying the what's it called? What's the expression? Basically, you get everything
The
off your
tank of
chest.
anger. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That's good.
So it's interesting you mentioned there. Like we're all experimenting, right? And you just trying things is probably the best way to start. And you know, I'm like you, I'm reading up on things, seeing what other people are doing. And one thing that stuck with me recently is kind of saying, you know, this is the worst AI you'll ever use because it will only ever get better. And that's some way of looking at it, say, okay, try something. And then if it doesn't quite work, then try something a little bit different. Try and maybe give it a bit more context. But over time, you're building that muscle. So when things do get updated, like we've already seen, you know, GPT-3, 3.5, GPT-4, you know, the pace of change is rapid. And like we see in 6 months, there's so much of a change. So like I definitely subscribe to that of just try it, and if it doesn't quite work out, you know, you've tried something.
It doesn't work.
You've got
you know, next time, like try it again in a few weeks' time. Use the feedback things to be like, I expected this to do this better, you know, or whatever, because it's new for everyone, including the people who wrote it. So like, the feedback's useful, you know.
Absolutely, and that feedback it goes directly back into the system. So it doesn't matter which AI system you're using, whether it's Copilot or not. It's like that can then go back in to fine tune the responses, which means it gets better for everyone because it has a reference of, oh, you asked this kind of question, but it wasn't that great of a response. So yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. I think maybe it's a case of, oh, I don't want to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'll just leave it. But actually, it's worthwhile getting into that habit as well. Very good. So I think there was one extra thing, Tom, that I wanted to ask you about, because I've seen you talk about this as well, is that you've gone a little bit further than seems to be other people, in that you've actually extended Copilot for your own needs.
Yes, you can make Copilot do extra stuff, which is very exciting with plugins, and it's so easy. Like it really is. So there's a few different things. So Microsoft Teams has a concept of messaging extensions. If you make messaging extensions, you can use them as Copilot plugins, which was a genius move because we had all that infrastructure in place. We all knew how to make messaging extensions. And there's a ton of good samples. You can go to the Teams Toolkit of your Studio Code. You can get one going. It takes less than an hour. I did a YouTube video about it. It's not a plug. So I took that, and I've got this concept, and I think this is not a new concept. Other people have it as well, but I kind of saw it online somewhere, of like a communication manifesto, like a set of rules that like you would like to hold yourself to for like how you communicate with people. You know, like be polite, be sincere. If you criticize, do it constructively. Don't undermine people. All these kind of things, like be aware of diversity, be aware of inclusion. Don't shout, keep emails short. All those things, right? So I have this list, and like everybody else, like you do it in the first week of January, and then you file that away and you never look at it again, right? So what I did was I took that and I made a plugin to tell Copilot, like, when I ask for my communication manifesto, it's this over here. It's these 10 rules, right? Which by itself isn't very interesting. Like I can now go to Copilot, and my Copilot is different from your Copilot now, because I can say, what is my personal communication manifesto? And it will list out 10 things. And that's kind of useful, but again, I'm never going to remember to do that. What gets way more interesting is, because Copilot also sees all my Teams messages and my emails, at the end of every week, I can say, based on how I communicated last week, how does that stack up against my communication manifesto and the standard I'm supposed to be holding myself to? Call out the places where it didn't. And that's been really interesting. There've been a few, there's not been many. Most of the time it's quite good at calling out, like, actually, you're all right, because look, all your emails have been concise and short, because I don't like writing emails. But like, yeah, sometimes you'd be like, well, this email was quite long. And I was like, yeah, it's quite long, you know, or like here, this was a criticism, but it wasn't super constructive, you know. And then again, that comes back to like, what else would you do? How would you do it? And it's like, oh, you know, different sort of sentence structures and stuff like that. But I find that really kind of a useful way, and it's an interesting way of using a plugin. Plugins don't always have to do stuff. They can also be good ways of bringing in additional information.
That reminds me of a great case, or like an idea. Imagine that we had this ability to score the messages. So you go to Outlook, and when you have your emails, like each email has like a score attached to it, and that is your personal communication score based on your rules. And then based on that, like when you click on the score, you get the exact tips. Like here's how, like 3 ways to improve it the next time. So it's like overlaid on so it's not a thing in a different experience, but instead it's where you email. It's attached to email, or in Teams to message. Like if you chat, maybe it's on a thread or a few messages. Like this is like the generic tone of it, and this is kind of the score, and this is the way to improve it the next time. So you get it in the context of your work, as opposed to having to go elsewhere and aggregate the messages there.
Yeah, that's such a good idea, especially if it calculates it just before you send the message. And you're like, if you're below the borderline, it's like,
yeah,
are you sure you're not drunk? Like, this is failed.
Like the arrow, the gauge go like,
yeah, it's like, stop drunk texting. Like,
or like basically the entry box becoming like more green towards good or more red towards bad.
Yeah.
It's Friday, so we need to check your emails, right?
Yeah, like do not send any emails on Friday.
Yeah. I love that as an example, because like I say, that's kind of something that's a bit more, well, it's two things, right? So it's proactive in the sense that I want to send this, and do, am I upholding my values, but also reflective as well. And I think, as we've talked through this chat, having that moment of reflection of what did I do, what do I need to do in the future? How did I act? To then kind of, take stock of that and go, okay, for next week, I'm going to be more intentional about how I work. And, not that it's going to be perfect all the time, but it's always good to have that moment of reflection. And, from a productivity standpoint, so many different, approaches to productivity is about, stop, take stock of what's happened, and then reflect on that. And that can be quite time consuming. And actually, certainly myself in the past is kind of like, you're trying to find that time to just sit and not do work when you're really busy. And it seems like Copilot's really fitting that gap and speeding that whole process up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Well, fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom, for coming to talk to us today, sharing your insights and how you use AI. I've had tons of ideas from you as well. I'm desperate to now go off and try them. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.